Welcome back to the Plant Profile Podcast. Today I want to talk to you guys about a absolutely delicious berry and medicine that comes from the shrub of Amelanchier alnifolia, otherwise known as Juneberry, shadbush, and a myriad of other common names as well. This is one of the very first plants that I interacted with when I first moved here to Spokane and went out foraging. Juneberry is fairly abundant in our hills here, and it just so happened to be during a season when these berries were abundant, very, very abundant. These deep, reddish-blue, beautiful berries that really I can imagine would draw anybody in, that have this delicious, sweet kind of almondy flavor. Now, at the time, I actually had never seen Juneberry before. I didn't know if it was edible, I didn't know much about it, but after identifying the plant, sitting with it, reading about it, I decided to dive in, have a little taste of one of the berries. They were super refreshing at the time that I first consumed these, especially because of the fact that it was a hot summer season and these berries are very nutritive, very refreshing, very lovely to just munch on as you're exploring through the woods. And since then, they've become one of my all-time favorite fruits. Absolutely delicious. And also excellent for our well-being as well, with some really wonderful properties on supporting our cardiovascular system. It's part of the Rosaceae family, meaning it's related to roses and almonds, peaches, and apples, and is a mid to large size multi-stem shrub that usually grows anywhere from 3 to 16 feet tall. It's got thin, lightly red tinged stems that sprawl up and outward from a central point, with oval leaves with fine tooth margins and a slightly pale to dark green coloration. In early spring, their buds produce this orangish green kind of gradient that eventually go on to produce 5-petaled white flowers from mid to late spring. Now, the part that we're going to be talking about today is from the berries, which are these bluish purple to reddish colored berries with a sweet, slightly sour almondy flavor that are roughly the size of blueberries and have many of the same properties as blueberries. It loves to grow in cold regions of North America, from Alaska through British Columbia and as far south as Northern California, as well as east to the Great Plains. It prefers regions with all 4 seasons, where it's going to get that winter, that spring, that summer, and that fall. It tends to grow naturally in rich, sandy or loamy acidic soils on hillsides and near forest edges, as well as rivers. Birds absolutely love this plant. They love to eat the berries, and also use the dense shrub for nesting purposes, both for building nests in the shrub itself, but also the dead branches of Amelanchier alnifolia make great material for them to build with as well. Its roots build structure to the soil and prevent erosion around its area, particularly a couple feet down. And like many other shrubs, it also creates a microclimate for insects and smaller plants due to windbreak and water retention, as well as nutrient redistribution when the leaves die back in fall time. There's a number of different plants that it likes to grow around, such as Pinus ponderosa pine, Mahonia aquifolium, also Oregon grape, likes to grow underneath of Amelanchier, where it actually also helps to further build soil structure. It also does well with arrowleaf balsamroot and other woodland shrubs like elder. I've also seen it grow around birch varieties when it's near water. Now, the Juneberries themselves are an excellent food source to turn to, whether it's just that you're hiking around and you want to just munch on the berries themselves, or harvest them for later for syrups, jams, wines, that kind of thing. It can be used very similarly to the way you would use apples or blueberries. And in fact, many of the medicinal properties of this plant are similar to both apples and blueberries. As always, I have to remind you that I am not a doctor, I am an herbalist, and anything that you're hearing here, you should further research before you put any kind of plants into your body. Always know what it is that you're ingesting, and if you're unsure how your body's going to react to a particular plant or fungi, do a patch test first. Start with putting the plant in between the crease of your arm, let that sit for 5 to 10 minutes, notice if you have any rashing, burning, anything like that. And if you do, don't consume that plant. Just like these other fruit, Juneberry is highly antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, while also having a cardiotonic property as well. It also supports capillary elasticity and strength, basically helping the endothelial cells in our vasculature to become more resilient and more able to withstand stress. So all these properties coming together make it an excellent fruit to turn for as a regular nutrient source to help with cardiovascular well-being. It has been studied to help with modulating and balancing blood pressure, whether you're low on blood pressure or high, partly due to its vasodilatory properties, helping to relax our vasculature. It is also considered an alterative and mild diuretic, which is going to help to drain the body of toxins, and with that mild diuretic property, helping to lower blood pressure. And so, as you can see all around, this is a fruit that is a friend to our hearts. And it shows this in a doctrine of signatures with that slight red hue to the berries and that hue of red that is along all the stems as well. Apart from its affinity for the heart, it is also a mild demulcent, meaning it helps to moisten the mucosa of our digestive system with the pectin that's found abundantly within the fruit. And that pectin can be used topically as well to coat burns and minor cuts. For minor cuts particularly, this plant is also slightly astringent, which is going to mean that it's going to help to pull in and kind of bind that wound. Again, only in the case of mild wounds. You don't want to use this for a major gash or anything. Of course, as we mentioned, it's commonly used as a food source. It's very nutritive. It's prebiotic, meaning it's going to help to feed our gut bacteria. You should note, however, that in high doses, this plant can become slightly laxative. It also supports the extracellular matrix in remodeling our tissues of our body. And then also can help to promote collagen synthesis, which is going to work together with that tissue remodeling. So great for, again, minor wounds, strains, that kind of thing. Lastly, it does have a good amount of potassium, which can help with regulating fluid retention in our cells. Energetically, this plant is slightly cooling initially, with it then becoming a little bit more diffusive to heat in the core by relaxing the vasculature and promoting circulation to our limbs and further reaches of our body, which is going to have a slightly warming property. It is also quite moistening with the pectin there and nourishing as well, and then also relaxant to the mind and body. I've also turned to it to help with soothing digestion and relieving inflammation in the gut particularly, especially because it acts as a prebiotic, so it's working with our gut microbiome. Its constituents are going to be composed of pectin, this kind of gel-like substance made of polysaccharides, also flavonoids and anthocyanins, as well as quercetin and camphorol, which all act as antioxidant, anti-inflammatory constituents. It's got some tannins in it, which create that astringency, manganese, iron, calcium, magnesium, and a good high dose of vitamin C, B, and trace amounts of K. You do want to avoid using this plant if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. With pregnancy, it actually can stimulate menstruation, so you have to be careful. However, this is a plant that most people can consume. It's absolutely delicious, and as we've already discussed, very nutritive and supportive to the body overall. Now, for giving back to this plant, there's a lot of different things we can do if we're going to be foraging from it particularly. For one, you have to remember that this is, again, a plant that birds and rodents absolutely adore. And so it is kind of a competitive game trying to get a few berries for yourself. But remember that as you're harvesting, these berries aren't just for us, they're also for the birds. And so the way that I like to kind of limit myself is I'll never try to reach up and pull a branch down that's way up high out of my reach just to get a bunch of berries. I'll only forage and harvest the ones that are within arm's reach, so that way I'm saving a good amount for the local wildlife. You can harvest the seeds of this plant after the berries ripen, but they should be scarified, meaning they should be soaked in a vinegar base or nicked, and then planted in fall so that they can get cold stratified. You can also cold stratify them in the refrigerator to then plant in spring. You can also propagate Amelanchier through cuttings. Particularly the easiest one to do here are cuttings of root suckers, which can be taken before the buds break and planted in early spring. The suckers should be at least a year old and at least 6 inches away from the plant. You could also take softwood cuttings, where you're going to get the pieces of new growth that haven't quite hardened up into actual wood yet, where you're going to take around 6 to 8 inches of the cutting of soft green new growth that has several leaf nodes, and then plant that, ideally with a little bit of some root hormone as well. I haven't propagated this plant through cuttings myself. I have tried with seeds, which we will see if they produce this spring. But from what I was reading, the root suckers are the easiest way to propagate Amelanchier. The other thing that I like to do is that if I'm eating them in the forest as I'm hiking, I'll just take some of those berries, kind of chew on the seeds a little bit to nick them, and then just literally spread them, kind of spit them out around, and that's going to ideally create new growth next year. If you decide to grow Amelanchier alnifolia in the garden, it does really well with nitrogen fixers like lupine, astragalus, and beans. It also gets along well with shade-preferring ground cover and understory plants like strawberry and uva ursi, which you can plant around the base of the shrub. And then also late summer or fall blooming flowers like goldenrod can help to extend the pollinator cycle in your garden, while the Amelanchier extends it back further into early spring. Well, I hope that you are able to find some Juneberry this year, especially if you're living in our northern regions. If you are not living in our northern regions here in North America, you can also order Juneberry syrup, Amelanchier alnifolia syrup, again also known as Saskatoon, you might find it commonly known. You can have that imported from places like Canada. Great alternative to other fruit syrups for various uses. If you get the chance to forage for this plant itself, remember to be kind to the rest of the wildlife around you. Never over-harvest. Always be sure you know where you're harvesting from, that you know it's not got any toxins nearby. And remember that, again, if you're just hiking around and you happen to find this plant, it makes a nice snack to munch on that you can then spit the seeds out to feed the forest. If you have any questions for me at all, feel free to reach me at theearthengrove@gmail.com, where I will answer your questions as best as I can. I hope that you enjoy our absolutely beautiful and wonderful plant allies, Amelanchier alnifolia, Saskatoon, Juneberry, shadbush, whatever you want to call it, this absolutely stellar northern plant. Be well and have a blessed rest of your day.